Greetings, traveler.
Hey everyone, let's have a look at all the new Nagas and beasts. As per usual, I'm gonna quickly go over all the removed, changed, and returning cards. If you don't care, you can skip ahead to the new stuff, no hard feelings. So, our removed Nagas, we lose the Death Rattle package here with the Reborn on the Weary Mage and the Showy Cyclist. We lose Fire Scale, which is an easy source of playing some Tavern spells. And then we also lose some Deep Blue support from the Siren. But probably the biggest one here is we lose the Fauna Felbat archetype. So you can no longer play the Dragon Demon that buffs the spell power, and then Fauna, and then Felbat, and then eat a big shop. So, making some room for some fun new stuff. The new Naga stuff's gonna be really cool. Now we have Athissa coming back, but she has been buffed. She now buffs all your Nagas instead of just 4 friendly ones. So very nice. We're also going to see that there's lots of ways to cast spells in and out of combat. Priestess is back, which is fun. Just gives you some extra spells to cast. The Spellcraft is a spell, and then the actual Tavern spell is a spell, so you kind of get a 2-for-1 there. Very decent cards to pick up early, especially if you have any kind of spell power already. Darkrest, super fun Naga to play with. Little tip, this does work with Drakari, so if you keep it on your board, it'll upgrade from tier 1 to tier 3 straight away instead of just going from 1 to 2, because it upgrades end of turn. That's not entirely clear, so I always like to explain that. Very nice and good card to get early on, because once it's at 6, it stays at 6, and you can just farm a bunch of tier 6 Nagas with this. Groundbreaker is then fantastic payoff for the strategist. If you get your strategist to 6, you'll very likely make Golden Groundbreaker at some point. You also just get a bunch of extra Nagas to spam with the Groundbreaker. Very fun card to play with. There's also going to be the Groundbreaker Trinket, which we've already revealed, where it'll buff an adjacent minion or the minion to the right or whatever, can't remember. But that's going to play super well together. Very fun combo. Then Deep Blue goes from a tier 4 to a tier 3, but the Spellcraft does get toned down a little bit. That does make sense, because obviously you don't want your 4-drop to be as strong as your 3-drop, and they buffed Deep Blue to keep up with all the power creep that gets introduced when you have something like Time Warp plus anomalies, which is quite a bit more than just trinkets, what we're going to have at the start of this season at least. Destiny goes from a 3 to a 4, so these guys are just trading places. Alright, let's talk about the new Naga stuff. We've got a new 2-drop Tide Razor, which is Taunt, Death Rattle, cast a Shifting Tide on an adjacent minion. So Shifting Tide is +2/+2 on a minion, and then if it's a Naga, cast it twice. So if you can put this next to a Naga, that's +4/+4. So these are very decent stats to have tempo-wise on a 2-drop. So fantastic if you can put that next to a Naga early, and then later on we'll see there's some synergy where you are casting multiple spells in combat and getting rewarded for that. Abyssal Bruiser. So this is a specific one. We've had a 5-drop in the past, I think it was called Fungus or something along those lines, that grew every time you cast a Tavern spell. So you don't need to have this on your board, because it keeps track of all the Tavern spells you have cast this game, and then when you roll it in the Tavern, it already has those buffs. So there is definitely some potential for abuse here, where I remember Fungus at some point being very good because Lubber was a thing. Lubber would essentially give you way more access to Tavern spells. It would just spam things like Coin and Careful Investment and Overconfidence, all these cheap economy spells. So that's another reason now where you should cycle Coin, even though it doesn't do anything normally. It'll now buff your Abyssal Bruiser later on if you roll that. It's also a 4-drop, so it's eligible for Eyes, which will, double the stats on it very easily. Very fun design, very nice. For this specific thing, when I read this text, it says cast Shifting Tide. I think if it's the minion doing it, it says this casts Shifting Tide. So I think you're going to get credit for your spell cast on Abyssal Bruiser when the minions in combat cast it. Now, not 100% sure on that, but I seem to remember there is a subtle difference in the wording, but we'll figure that out soon enough on launch, of course. Then Seafloor Recruiter seems fantastic. It's a rally effect, so it can go off multiple times. It casts Chef's Choice on a minion to the right. That's fantastic. We love these early economy cards. The stat line is totally fine. A 3/5 doesn't always die. You could throw Spellcrafts on this thing to keep it alive. As long as there is one other minion alive, it will keep generating value. Now, not like a bigwig, because a bigwig, it can literally be the only minion and then just attacks and buffs and attacks and buffs. So it is less likely that you're going to get 2 Chef's Choices out of this, but it's still a fantastic early game pickup because casting Chef is not just plus a gold. It could be plus 2 gold if it's a shell collector, or you could just find a great minion, right? So if you cast Chef's Choice on a random Naga that's next to you, it could make Seafloor Recruiter. So now you have 2 of them, right? So very fun. Maelstrom Emergent is another great payoff here. Your tavern spells cast an extra time in combat. So I've already seen a Recruiter. Now you're getting double Chef's Choice when this attacks. Tide Razor, you're getting double Shifting Tide. And the big payoff here is the 6-drop, which is Ruthless Queen's Guard. Battle Cry, Death Rattle, and Rally. Cast the Queen's Command. This is a Queen's Command. Give your minions +3/+3, and all the Nagas +3/+3 again. So kind of like AoE Shifting Tide. Nice. So spell power. In the previous video, we talked about how dragons will have some potential with Rylak to generate spell power. So maybe a dragon beast lobby where you are buffing spell power and then you use Nagas as the payoff, where suddenly you have a lot of spell power and then you use the Queen's Command. You know, it's maybe a little convoluted, but a combo that definitely could exist. So looking forward to farming spell power through any kind of means and then using Queen's Guard here as the big payoff. And then we also have a dual type minion. So we didn't talk about this in the dragon video because we didn't really want to spam it, but now we reveal it in the Naga video. It's a Naga dragon. Whenever 2 friendly minions attack, cast Shiny Ring. So similar to this, where you want to farm spell power, have this in the back, and then it's kind of like an Avenge, but minions have to attack. They don't even have to die. So Wind Fury works really well, or just stuff with high health that doesn't die and can keep attacking. And then you can continue casting Shiny Rings in the combat, which should again contribute to Abyssal Bruiser growing. So there's a little bit of synergy there. Yeah, seems like a fun season to get any kind of spell buff going. All right, let's talk beasts. No more Shimmermoth. I'm sure that a lot of people appreciate that. It was pretty oppressive across a wide range of MMR. We also see no more Nuzao. That is huge. Nuzao is one of the most disruptive beast cards there is. Golden and Wind Fury, this can just completely shut down Scam. It can snipe Tidus, right? It can snipe Battle Cries or Bran with Rylak. Very, very disruptive cleave. So yeah, seeing that go is a big change on how you think about countering certain things. So, but yeah, that's always fine. Some change, mix it up. It'd be boring if there's always the same cards. Now we also see some more self-damage beast support going. No more Fellhorn, no more Rampager, and then the Beetle package. Banshee is coming back. It is a tier 5 now again, but it should reborn again in the tavern with full stats and bonus keywords. This was changed temporarily due to Kel'Thuzad. This was referred to as Horse Pivot, believe it or not. If you weren't around for that, you would essentially get as many stats on your board as possible, use Mutinous to make a big Sin Runner Banshee, then you would place Kel'Thuzad next to Banshee, preferably with a Drakari to enhance the end of turn, and then the Kel'Thuzad would destroy the Banshee, summon it again with full stats and Reborn, but you would also get the Reborn on the board. So if you had a Drakari, you would now have 2 Banshees without Reborn, 1 with the Reborn, and then at the start of the turn, they would combine, you would get them in your hand, and all the stats would essentially be tripled. You put it down again, rinse and repeat, and you would essentially triple your stats every turn. And especially if you start out with a big base number, say like, 3,000, now you've got 9,000, you got 27,000. You can see how that very, very quickly gets out of hand. And you just get a board of just massive, massive horses. So therefore, Horse Pivot. But seeing as Kel'Thuzad is no longer in the game, they don't have to take that precaution where the Reborn only happens during the combat. Now it happens during the tavern phase again. So, we're going to get something like Grave Robber back as well. So you could use a Grave Robber on a Banshee and, get it back with full stats. Banana Slamma is back, but it's a 4-drop now. You can eyes it. It's even more broken. Next. All right, no, that's not true. They changed it from double the stats to double the damage. As we've seen with Dramalock, that makes all the difference, right? If you have something that has, 5,000 attack and 5,000 health, that is very difficult to deal with. If it's got 5,000 attack and, 80 health, not that difficult to deal with. Now, that's not to say that this is suddenly unplayable, because beasts do have an easier time summoning more stuff than murlocs. Yes, murlocs do summon stuff, or did summon stuff with base skill, because we're gonna see, or if you've already seen the big video, base skill is removed. But beasts do it easier, right? Like, we're gonna talk about a new beast card that summons a bunch of sewer rats, so it is easier to overwhelm your opponent with tokens. So if you have any kind of base buff to your beasts, we're gonna see there's a new card as well. To do that, you can use Banana Slamma to really push the attack and give your tokens quasi venomous, where as long as you have enough of them, you can take out the opponent's board. But it's not so oppressive in that it beats everything, because the opponent could run you out of tokens by playing their own tokens. They could do stuff like have divine shields or cleave, so there's counterplay. Whereas old Banana Slamma didn't have a lot of counterplay. It was like, here's a bunch of beasts with insane health and damage. Enjoy. All right, so we'll see how easy it is to set that up and how effective. Sly Raptor's going from a tier 4 to a tier 3. That's just shifting some tiers around, like not a big deal. Stegodon is coming back and it's buffed. It now gives 4 attack and this rally. So if you've never seen this card in action, essentially what happens is you put it in the front, it gives your board +4 attack, but also the rally. And that's the big point, because when you first see this card, you think, that can never get big enough, right? But what happens is very much like Leapfroggers, where it stacks. So the next minion that attacks also just gives 4 attack, but it has the rally, and it now transfers it to the next minion. So the next minion now has the rally twice. So it then gives the rally twice, which means it gives 8 attack and 2 rallies. So then the next minion has the rally 4 times, and then the next minion has a rally 8 times, and so on and so on. So there is another great card that's coming back, which is the Poltron. This is a tier 6 beast mech, which has the effect Avenge 4 this attacks. So you just put that in the back with Stegodon. You have Stegodon in the front, and then in the middle, just as many tokens as you can fit. So preferably you have like Divine Shield, Wind Fury on your Stegodon, so it attacks fast. You do not want to reborn it, because that means you attack with just a regular rally, which you don't want to do. You want to attack with the new and improved rally that's already on the next beast. And then by having tokens in the middle, it accomplishes 2 things. Number 1 is you beat the Avenge for the Poltron. So the Poltron attacks. It gains Divine Shield and then it attacks. So unless it attacks into a Leroy, it doesn't kill itself, which means that it's in the back and it can attack again. But it now also applied the Stegodon rally to your whole board again. So that's number 1. Number 2 is the tokens that are on your board have now gotten buffed by the Stegodon. So not only are they feeding the Poltron rally, they're also then applying the Stegodon rally again to your whole board, also to the Poltron. And then when the Avenge 4 goes off again, the Poltron has a massive amount of rallies, transferring that to your board again. And it's very much like Frogs, where you just need as many tokens in the middle as possible to stretch the fight as long as possible. And you can get like 20,000 damage with this composition, so, or more if you have a really, really good one. So quite fun to play. It is a little bit more fragile to, say, Cleaves and Wind Furies, or if your opponent has a bunch of tokens to soak your beasts, but it's excellent at dealing with very high stat boards. All right, let's talk about the new beasts. But before we do so, if these videos are useful for you, please consider subscribing to the channel. We put so much time and effort in getting all of these prepped and ready for you in time. Highly appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button. The Wyvern Outrider is a nice value beast. Whenever this takes damage, you get a free refresh, and it starts with 8 health. So I would say early in the game, it's somewhat likely that it is going to at least survive 1 hit. So you get 2 free refreshes, which if you're going to spend those on rolling is basically just 2 gold, which is very nice to have. It should also stack. So even if you're leveling to 5 that turn and you don't want to roll on tier 4, you can then have more rolls on tier 5. So it seems like a fantastic beast to pick up in the mid game. There's probably also still some ways where you can do self-damage beast stuff, and that way you can get the max out of this, because it says 3 times per turn, so you can't just like deal 20 damage to it and get 20 free rerolls. And then the golden version gives you 2 free refreshes, so up to 6. Yeah, seems like a really nice mid-game beast to put on the board to get a little bit more value, especially once you're on tier 5 to cash in those free rerolls. Sewer Lord is the card we were talking about earlier. It's going to be easier to summon tokens. This is dearly missed because in the current meta, or the meta we just had, it's tough to summon a lot of stuff. There's no mech horse, there's no mount. So a card like this is really required if they want to do something like that Banana Slamma comp where you can now summon very high damage beasts. You actually need to be able to summon some stuff. And Sewer Lord does that for you. So the death rattle is you summon 2 sewer rats, and those sewer rats, when they die, they spawn a turtle. So it's kind of like a beast inside a beast inside a beast, which, you know, is what beasts do, right? That's basically mech horse, this one, but better because you get taunts, so that's fun. If you put a reborn on this thing, it goes even harder. Now, if you have a Titus, it's never going to reborn, but without a Titus, or if your Titus got sniped, sure. Honestly, if you're doing that Banana Slamma build or even Stegodon, you probably don't even want a Titus on your board because it's not a beast. It's a bit awkward, and you know, you just play a reborn and then you get 2 sewer rats that come out, and then this guy reborns too, is making another 2 sewer rats. So seems good for the archetypes we just mentioned. Lurking Leviathan, whenever you summon a beast, give it 2 attack and improve this permanently. Yeah, that's basically this, and this is also the support for that Banana Slamma, or the Banana Slamma support for this, however you want to frame it. All right, so now you can play beasts during the tavern phase as well, because it doesn't say whenever you summon a beast during combat. Yeah, it seems like you can farm this up relatively easily. Little harder if you don't have a Bran, right? Because you want to be playing Bran with Tiger Shark and discover a lot of beasts. So maybe that's like a temporary Bran on your board. Get a lot of buffs here, and then like maybe just sell the Bran, and then you rely on tokens and you start playing Banana Slamma. It's a spin on this comp. Again, keep in mind, all of this is just theory craft without having touched the cards, right? So the moment I've played with the cards, I'm going to be able to tell you way more. So it's another reminder that on April 9, I believe, at 6 my time, which is Central European summertime, we are going to be playing in the early access event. So if you do want to get a little bit of a head start, if you want to know which cards are likely going to be pretty good on release, tune into that. It's going to be 6 hours of playing with the new cards against other streamers, YouTubers, and then we figure out what's good and what's bad. That is it for the Naga and the Beast reveal. As always, guys, I read every single one of the comments on these types of videos, so please let me know anything I missed, any cool combo you thought of you want to share, or just whatever. Put it down there, and I'll see you guys in the comments. It also doesn't say during the combat. Oh, it also says whenever you summon Beast. Whenever you summon Beast, give it to it. Okay. Sorry.